Alrighty, I hope everybody's doing well. Figured we'd go ahead and start with Unit 2 study guide now. We'll start out with the laws of supply and demand, which are simple enough. The law of demand says that as the price of a good goes up, then the quantity demanded for that good is going to go down. Either A, because people can't afford it at that higher price, or they're less willing to buy it at that higher price. So what we see here is if the price goes up, quantity demanded is going to go down. Right? If we're looking at a burger being $8, you're going to buy a lot more of that burger than if it was $20. So if the price goes up, quantity demanded is going down. And again, I want to reiterate here that we're looking at the quantity demanded changing and not the demand. The demand is looking at how much we like or want or need a product. The quantity demanded is just how much we're buying or the quantity that is demanded. All right, and vice versa, that if the price goes down, the quantity demanded is going up. People are going to buy more at a lower price. The law of supply says the opposite. As the price of a good goes up, businesses are going to be willing to supply more and more of that good. So as the price goes up, the quantity supplied is going to go up because they can make a bigger profit. And vice versa, that if the price goes down, the quantity supplied goes down because they're making less money there. If we're looking at why this demand curve is downward sloping, it's because of the inverse relationship between those two. We've got price and quantity. We go from low to high. We go from low to high. So at a high price, our quantity demanded is going to be low. But as that price goes down, our quantity demanded is going to get higher. So our demand curve's downward sloping because of this negative relationship between the two. High price means a low quantity demanded. A low price means a high quantity demanded. Our supply curve, on the other hand, is always going to be upward sloping. We've got price, quantity, low to high, low to high. Our supply curve is always going to be upward sloping because as price levels go up, businesses are going to be willing to supply more and more because they can turn a bigger profit. So if we're changing the price of this good, going from $1 to $2 or $2 to 50 cents or $1 to $3, we're just moving along that curve. The quantity supplied is changing. But if we're looking at what can shift this demand curve or what can shift the supply curve, it's anything except for price. So if we're looking at the shifters of demand, we use this acronym BITER. Let me try to get this more in focus, 1 second. All right, we use this acronym BITER. It's where we're looking at the number of buyers, right? If we look at Glenn County's population growing, our demand for fast food restaurants and homes and cars and all of that has gone up over the past several years. If we're looking at income, as people's income goes up, the price of a good is a smaller percentage of their income, right? That when I was in college, I didn't go out to eat a whole lot because it costs a lot and I didn't have a lot of money. But now that I make more money, that's a smaller chunk of my income. That's a smaller chunk of my budget. Tastes impact our demand, right? You know, if you like one burger restaurant over another, then your demand for that restaurant's going to go up. If places get better ingredients or better quality or better customer service, that makes us like them more. We go there more often. Expectations for the future impact our demand right now. So I'm making these as of January, and when I went into Target earlier today, I saw some bathing suits, which it's 50 degrees outside. I can't imagine people really need, but it's this expectation that it's going to be hot again in like 2 months, and that we'll want to have bathing suits ready to go then. And then finally, the price of related goods. That's where we get into our substitutes and complementary goods. Substitute goods we're buying in place of one another. Complementary goods we're buying together. So if we're taking a look at these, goods A and B are substitute goods. An increase in the price of A will cause the demand for B to do what? So if these are substitutes and they're buying them in place of one another, if A gets more expensive, then the demand for B is going to go up because fewer people are going to buy A, more people will buy B. Goods X and Y are complements. They're buying them together. So a decrease in the price of X will cause the demand for Y to do what? If X is getting cheaper, more people are going to buy X. And if they're complementary goods, that means more people are going to buy Y as well. Now, if we're looking at the income elasticity, we're looking at whether something is a normal or an inferior good. Right? A normal good, as your income increases, so too does your demand for that good. That's most goods, a house, a car. You know, once you get your first career job and your income goes up, you can buy a lot more. Your demand for normal goods increases. So a decrease in income will cause the demand for N to go down, right? If it's a normal good, if you make less money, then you're going to buy less of it. If you make more money, you'll buy more of it. Whereas if good R is an inferior good, then we're going to see an opposite relationship there, right? An inferior good is one that you buy more of as your income goes down, or you buy less of as your income goes up. Think about ramen noodles. So if my income goes down, my demand for ramen noodles is probably going to go up because they're cheaper than everything else. So I would consider them an inferior good at least. Now, if we're looking at these coefficients, right, we're measuring the relationship between these two goods. Now, the one that we use for supply and demand is our quarter pounder, our change in quantity over our change in price, right? So what we're looking at here is, is there a big or a small relationship between these two? If the price goes up, what's going to happen to the change in quantity then? If there's a big change in quantity, then we would see that there's an elastic supply, right? That a small change in price can have a big impact on the quantity. But, if we're looking at, a small change, we would see an inelastic supply, right? Even if the price of walnuts were to go up, that doesn't mean we could easily change our quantity supplied of walnuts. But the formula we use here is our quarter pounder, the change in quantity and the change in price. If we're looking at how we determine the elasticity of supply, the biggest things that we're looking at here is time, right? That even if farmers want to grow more walnuts now, walnut trees take a decade to grow, and so we need the time in order to change that supply. Whereas if we're looking at the supply of pizza, maybe it's a little bit more elastic, right? That a pizza restaurant, if they get busy, can crank up supply pretty easily. The availability of resources is another big one. If you look at our supply of, let's say, food, right, I would say it's a lot more elastic than our supply of oil because it's more available, right? Oil's a non-renewable resource. We can only change our supply of it by so much, whereas food, we could produce more if we're given the right amount of time. And then finally, if we're looking at elastic and inelastic supply, it kind of comes back to this idea of barriers to entry, right? Is there something preventing us from expanding this market or producing more? Sorry, I don't know why the quality's going out on this, but y'all bear with me. All right, so if we're looking at these graphs for demand, an inelastic or an elastic demand for a good, the way that I remember it, when I think of inelastic, I think of that I. That demand curve is completely vertical. So our demand curve is completely vertical because no matter what I charge for the price, my quantity isn't changing. So that demand curve is completely vertical. I like to think of it like the letter I here. It's completely vertical because I can charge $2, $5, $10, $20, and my quantity demanded isn't changing. Whereas if I think about my elastic demand, I think about that E, right? Each of these lines are horizontal. An elastic demand would look like this, right? That people are only going to buy it at this one price. If we think about gas stations, that's about as close as we get. That if the gas price in Brunswick is $2, people aren't willing to spend more on that because they can get it for less. It's an identical good. I'm not willing to spend $2.50 if I can get it down the street for $2. And people aren't buying it at less because businesses are already charging as little as they can. So if there's an elastic demand, then that means that customers aren't willing to accept a change in price. If we're looking at these coefficients for the elasticity of demand, if the coefficient is less than 1, we would say that it has an inelastic demand. That means that even a big change in price, and it comes back to this idea of our quarter pounder, that even if there's a big change in price, there's not a big change in our quantity. If it's perfectly inelastic, sorry, I didn't see that it said perfect.